think empowering people and helping them to realise that we've just changed form from the physical to the non-physical, and to give them that healing and that insight and that strong evidence that life goes on.
British intuitive and spiritual medium Caroline Crawford was born not only with the gift of communicating to the spirit world, but also to the universal consciousness. She touches people's hearts and souls all over the world with her healing energies and the accuracy of her messages. Caroline Crawford, my guest next on Self Talk Radio Show. Brought to you by Pure Energy Apothecary, people and planet-friendly skincare. Find them at Bed Bath & Beyond or online at pureenergybody.com. Welcome to Self Talk Radio Show. I'm Sarah Spencer. My next guest is a British intuitive and spiritual medium, born not only with the gift of communicating to the spirit world, but also to the universal consciousness. Please welcome Caroline Crawford to Self Talk Radio Show. Hi.
Hi, Sarah. Good to be here.
It's good to have you, definitely. We tried this recording once before, and we had so much interference from the other side that we had to reschedule. One of those things. Does that happen to you often?
It has happened. I wouldn't say often, but yes, it does. It does occur, particularly with electronics. So,
yeah, a watch.
One of those things.
Are you able to wear a watch?
I am.
I can't. Yeah. I cannot wear a watch. They'll break on me every single time. So I guess I'm just walking electricity. So, but
dear. Few people do experience that, but luckily, no, I can.
So you have the experience of being a spiritual medium. How soon did you know that you were a medium?
Well, actually knew I was a medium a little later in life, but the first experiences I had was when my great-grandmother passed away. And as a young child, I always used to, when I visited her, I'd go and sit on her lap and she'd tell me stories. And then this day, my nan and my mum wouldn't let me in to see. They said, no, you can't go. They blocked the way. They said, you must go upstairs and play. So off I went. And while I was there, it was all very natural to me. I thought this happened to everybody, to tell you the truth. My great-grandmother appeared and just said, I'm in what you would know as heaven, and I'm very happy and I'm fine, and I'll always be with you. And I was just like, oh, I just didn't think anything of it. I thought it was quite natural. And when I did go back downstairs, I said to my mum and nan, as they blocked the way again, saying, why didn't you tell me Grandma was in heaven? And they were just like, opened mouth. What do you mean? I said, well, I've just seen her and she's fine. And they were amazed. But later on in life, then in my sort of late teens, early 20s, when I discussed it with my mum, she said, yes, your great-grandmother had also had that gift, but it was kept quiet because it wasn't always favourably looked upon in those days.
And still, still people have a hard time with mediumship. Do you find that, or?
Yeah, some do, and that's fine. I do realise it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. We're all different.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I grew up with a psychic in our neighborhood. I just assumed every neighborhood had a psychic that you went to. I loved it. She was like a grandmother to me, and I remember I was 16. I went into her, and she said, "You are going to speak in a small room to thousands of people," and she's right. I'm a broadcaster.
Well, there you go, you see. I think a lot of women in particular, men as well, but I do think because of mothering instincts, women are very intuitive, and some, take it further. Some are a little anxious about it, but I think, we've all got an intuition within us, but I do think that some people, it's their soul's purpose, it's their sort of life's mission to share it with more people. And, I feel very strongly about that. It's almost like athletes. Some people are good at sports, but not everybody's going to be an Olympian. So I think some people just develop that when they realise that it's, it's healing. For me, it's at healing is at the basis of all my work, whether it's the mediumship, the channeling, the light transmission, it's all healing.
Now, I had the pleasure of speaking with your husband, Paul Crawford, and he is a channeler. And you are a medium. What is the difference between those two?
Well, I channel as well, but the mediumship is very much what we've just spoken about, when I tune in to that lovely vibration, that energy between worlds, if you like, the physical and the non-physical, and loved ones that have made their transition into the spirit world will come through with messages for their loved ones that are still here. Whereas a channeler, it's more information on personal growth, on self-empowerment, on how to be more in tune with your true self, on universal teachings, that kind of thing. So it isn't messages from your loved ones as such.
And what are some of the pieces of information you've learned as a channeler, channeling the information?
I think the biggest thing is that we are all interlinked. We are all part of the whole, and that nothing exists outside of consciousness, that we are all part of this consciousness, and that everybody has their own unique path.
Yeah. When someone comes to you for work in mediumship and they want to speak to a relative, how does it work? What can they expect working with you?
Okay, well, first of all, there's always exceptions to the rule, as with anything.
Yep.
But so I do various things with the mediumships. In Sarasota, I have what we call an audience with Caroline Crawford, where there'll be perhaps anything from 25, 30 or more people. So they're nice and intimate at the moment. They are growing. And then people will perhaps get a message for a few minutes. I'll be drawn to certain people. But if somebody comes to me for a private reading, then that's a little bit different, because that reading could be 30 minutes or an hour long. And before I sit down with them, I will tune into them. I'll just go into a gentle meditation before they arrive, and I will get some information that I will write down, and also spirit will come forwards for them. So it's a combination when they have a reading of personal growth, mediumship, sometimes clairvoyance, and guidance for them. But very much the mediumship, if that's what people are looking for, I try to focus on for them. But as we said, there's no guarantee a particular one will come through, but I do give very, very straightforward, clear, evidential evidence when they do come through.
What are some of the experiences you've had that have been the most memorable?
I think one or two of the most memorable, well, very recently, actually, just at one of the audiences I gave, a young man came through for a lady, and she got very emotional because she did feel him around herself, and that often happens. People will feel them because they have that emotional connection when they come through. But I was giving her the message and she was saying yes, 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 and then I just felt I had to reach my hand out and with my index finger just touch her nose, and she said, "Oh my God," she said, "that's so weird, that's just what he used to do." So, often the evidence is very personal to the person that is receiving the reading, the message. And another one, because when I first started developing this mediumship while I was living in London, I was under the understanding that spirit only came through once they'd been passed on 2 or 3 years. But there was one, whilst I was still in England, a young man had been killed in an accident that I knew absolutely nothing about before the young lady that turned out to be his sister had come for a reading. So I'd done my usual, sat down, got a lot of stuff channeled through, written it down, and I was quite matter of fact about it, didn't realise quite the impact it was going to have. So I just said, you lost someone very close. He was a brother to you, but not only a brother, you were soulmates. It was a very quick passing. He gave his name, he described his build, he described his colour hair, he gave his age, and it turned out it was her brother who had just been killed in a road accident 6 weeks previous. So even I was amazed, to be honest. But it was very healing for her. She still, she still had her grieving process, but she said the fact that it was undeniable, but that was him with that communication really helped her process to know that he was not just anywhere. He was somewhere. He said he's happier than he's ever been, which is often the message as well. And it really helped her and her parents with that loss. So that was quite amazing, being just 6 weeks of his accident.
Do you recommend people? I've always heard that when it's a fresh passing, that wait before you go see a medium. Is that accurate?
I would kind of agree with that, Sarah. But it's like anything. Things in this world and in the spirit world are continually evolving. But if somebody's going in and they're in such an emotional state, I'd agree with you. I'd say no, wait till you feel a little bit more settled. And listen for that real calling to go, that real, that yearning. Don't just go out of an overreaction of anxiety.
Do you happen to have people that visit you on a regular basis because they miss their loved one so much that they come in just so they can connect with that loved one?
I do have clients that would like to do that, but I don't like that, because we're not here to keep communicating with those that have passed on. You're here to live your life in the moment. So I always say don't come more than once or twice a year, because, I don't like that. It to me, it isn't healthy. You need to live the life that you're here to live for you and for your loved ones that are with you here now. Know that they're happy, they're always with you and guiding you and around you and inspiring you, but you're not here to live your life through them. We're here to live a life for our own expansion, our own soul growth, our own happiness and growth.
When you started doing this, have you had anyone from the other side say what it's like when they first pass? Is that, I know there's different belief systems, and I don't want to get into a religious conversation, but are there some commonalities of what people or what spirit experiences when they pass over? We're going to answer that question when we come back with Caroline Crawford on Self Talk Radio Show. Think websites are old-fashioned, out of touch with your core audience? Think again. While your tribe may love you on Instagram, you may be missing out on a whole client base that searches for you on Bing or Google. Then what? WebHelp US built Self Talk Radio Show's website, and I love it. Podcast uploads, open graph tags, SEO stuff, they do it all for me. WebHelp US, they even think of things like backing up my website, checking for viruses and stuff I frankly don't have time for. WebHelp US, professional websites for big picture people. WebHelpUS.com. Welcome back to Self Talk Radio Show. My guest is Caroline Crawford. She's a British intuitive, and just asked a question of, we don't want to get into a religious philosophical conversation. That's not where I'm going with this. But do you see some common patterns with spirit that's passed of what they do on the other side after they've passed?
Okay, so it's different for everybody, just as when we come into this world. So the way I explain things to people, but also what Spirit have told me leading on from that. But my understanding, my belief, my knowing is that we all come into the physical world from the non-physical. So we're born into this world from the spirit into the physical world, and it's a little bit different for everyone. Some people might be into a hospital, some at home, some in a forest, who knows. I've always fancied a natural birth in Africa, but that didn't happen. but and it's the same with spirit. When you pass over, it's made as gentle and as calmly as your spirit needs it to be. So if someone's always been used to being in a certain environment, for instance, we were told many years ago, when people are serving in war and they're killed in a war, they're very much pass over and they're given an environment in a spirit form of being in a hospital, being nursed, being cared for. So the transition is very smooth. It takes time. And if somebody has been very elderly maybe and they've passed from their own home, again, just for a while they make that transition, that, should I say, that adjustment, it's created for them so they feel that they're in an environment they understand. So, and I'd also like to add that, I think it's important people know that children's souls also live on. My husband and I, Paul, in 1999, actually 20 years ago, I had a stillborn baby. I was several months pregnant, and it was quite devastating at the time for us and our family. But a couple of years later, moving on from that, I decided I didn't want to try again. I thought, I'd had various miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, then a stillborn, and we'd named him Nathaniel. It was a little boy, but I had an experience where we had the most incredible evidence that he was around us, he was with us, without any shadow of a doubt. So it's a rather long story, so I didn't know whether you did want me to share it.
I do. What was the evidence?
Well, after a couple of years and deciding I didn't want to try again for a child, I was coming up to around 40 as well. I went back into my passion of horse riding, and we bought a beautiful horse called Tetley. And the yard I had her on was a new yard. There was new youngish girls running it. And they'd bought for the office a big whiteboard to write messages on, and there was never a pen. So I bought a blue pen and a red pen so they could write on the board important messages, more urgent, in red. So I went into the office, and both girls' management were there and one of the other staff, and I stood there and said, look, I've bought 2 pens. One is red for important messages on the whiteboard and one is blue. So I'm going to leave them with you, and whenever you want to use them, they're for everybody to use. But I've got a red one and a blue one. Look, and I held them in my hand. And we all stood talking for about another 10 minutes. We went to go. I said, where's the blue pen gone? They said, Caroline, you had it in your hand. I said, I know. I've got the red pen. No sign of the blue pen, and I hadn't moved from where I'd been standing. So we all looked round, and I sort of jokingly said, oh, the spirit children about, I bet somebody's messing about. And we all sort of couldn't find it. We said, look, we've got to go, we've got to bring the horses in, get them in for the night. So carried on, and then about an hour or so later I left. I went to my car, which was right round the other side of the stable blocks. It had been locked the entire time. Got in, drove home, took my handbag off the passenger seat, and there, staring at me, almost glowing, was this blue pen. And I was just, honestly, it just blew my mind away. So, cutting a long story short, I said to Paul, who's a channeler, Paul, I really think Spirit are trying to tell us they've been around a lot today. Can we sit and see if anything, wants to come through and talk, anybody wants to talk to us? There's a message. So he did, and his team, known as Jarama, came through and spoke to us. So they were talking through Paul and said, yes, there was a message. Yes, it was Spirit. Yes, it was Nathaniel, your little boy. Well, I just got the shivers all over because I had quite an emotional, connection to that, obviously. And he said the reason, the significance he did this with the pens was he wants you, Caroline, to write a leaflet explaining about your equine healing qualification so you can reach more people. He's going to inspire you. Well, I'd never written anything like that in my life, and the next morning I did a little meditation and wrote this leaflet. Well, I couldn't believe it. It was so eloquent. It was so well put together, and I put it out in different places, and it did generate a lot more interest. So I did a lot more healing with horses and their owners, and I'd often feel Nathaniel with me from then. And it was just a beautiful thing. Paul and I often feel him around, particularly when we're working with animals. And so it was just quite an amazing experience for me. Even though I've had all this experience with Spirit, that just sort of blew me away a little bit, because I still didn't know, and they wouldn't tell me, how did he move the pen from my hand into a locked car? Still not quite sure, but
he's a magician.
We're not meant to know.
He's a magician.
Yes.
That's neat. So you did work with horses and people as well?
I did, yes.
Tell me about that.
Now we've sort of relocated into into America, into Sarasota, I'm focusing more on the mediumship, on the channeling, and on the healing with people.
And who is the kind of person you love to work with?
In what sense do you mean that?
As a medium, who do you love to work with that comes to you?
Oh, you mean, right. Well, I have a team that works with me known as Alicia. They work with me, and they'll also help, because sometimes when I'm working with an audience, there's so many spirit there. It's a bit like a rowdy meeting in a stadium, and they will help just quieten things down a bit, because often there's so much excitement, so many relatives and friends wanting to come through to their loved ones, that they do need just putting a little bit in order, shall I say, in a nice way.
Do you ever be on a bus and be compelled to, if a spirit's saying, oh, I really want to talk, does that ever happen to you where it's a passerby and you happen to see a spirit wanting to communicate with them?
If I'm actually, it's happened maybe occasionally if I've been talking to somebody and I suddenly become aware, and I'm very, very diplomatic. I'm very careful, because I know, like I said earlier, it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
But you might just say it in a really casual way, and just say, maybe your mum's still with you and she'd like you to know that, she's happy and that she's glad you're happy and you're doing that. I'm sure she is, rather than saying, I've got your mother here, which might just worry somebody. So I'm very diplomatic, and I use a lot of integrity.
Have you ever been into a haunted house or anything like that?
Yes, I have.
Ooh, exciting.
Well,
Tell me.
And a lot of people that you ask that are sort of work in this field get quite frightened, but I find it quite fascinating. I have done clearing of spirits that maybe haven't realised they've passed over and needed some help being more peaceful and stop causing trouble in people's homes. I've had a couple of those where perhaps I had a lady that ornaments had been flying around a room and pictures spinning on the wall. There was quite a lot of activity.
Wow.
But it doesn't frighten me, because when you understand we're all spirit, and it's just misunderstanding sometimes, and they just need a little help, shall we say, to feel more peaceful.
And did you have success in rehoming the spirit?
Yes,
you did.
We did. That's
Where do they go?
Way of putting it. We did. Yes. Very much so, yes.
So
the lady's house settled down. She said she felt it was like, a breath of fresh air, like spring had come again. She felt happier in her home again. She was far more settled, far more peaceful. She was so appreciative of the work I did, so that was really nice.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big deal. I know we live in New England area, and the first thing that's coming into my mind is Amityville, and then some people say, oh, that's a hoax or whatever, but the truth is always somewhere in the middle, isn't it?
It is. I think so. I like to take the middle road most of the time.
And what do you love most about your work as a medium?
I think empowering people and helping them to realise that we've just changed form from the physical to the non-physical, and to give them that healing and that insight and that strong evidence that life goes on.
Hope.
Yes, hope, help with their grieving, and that trusting that life is ever evolving, that is infinite and eternal, and that their loved ones are happy, and they just want them to be happy.
British intuitive and spiritual medium Caroline Crawford has been my guest on Self Talk Radio Show. Where do we find more information about you, Caroline?
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Well, I have a website, and I also have a YouTube channel. So the website is www.carolinecrawford.org. Sorry, I couldn't resist a little joke after what we just spoke about. And my YouTube channel is Caroline Crawford Timeless Teachings. And I'm also on Facebook under the same Caroline Crawford Timeless Teachings.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure having you on. I'll have all the links to all of your stuff on selftalkradioshow.com. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great, Sarah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm Sarah Spencer for Self Talk Radio Show.